So let's go a little deeper on what we just saw.
Okay.
You're here with news about a new platform, DXC,
Yep.
CoreIgnite. Tell us about it and why this moment for it.
Well, I think, maybe just to kind of frame it for the audience, for those that don't know what core banking is, I'm sure, by show of hands, how many have been to a coffee shop and seen a Clover or Square device to take payments? Right, that's pretty much everybody in the room. For banks, there's a thing called core banking. That's their version of that. And DXC has been in the core banking business for over 30, 40 years. And so I think what's happened is there's been a confluence of energies in the industry where you've got AI coming to fruition, you've got money changing shape, going from physical currency to digital currency, and I think you also have banking consumers that want real-time access to things. I think that's changing, or that's creating a narrative for these banks' legacy. These banks have legacy technologies to sort of participate in that way. And I think the key thing is these banks that have had these technologies, battle-hardened technologies for 40 plus years, they can't just change on a dime.
Right.
So they need to have a way, an interface by which they could participate in this new economy to kind of react or kind of adjust to the demands of their consumer, but do it in a way that doesn't break anything, because they're highly regulated, unlike your coffee shop at a Square or Clover.
Right. So then go a little bit on what DXC CoreIgnite, like what does a bank miss without it?
Well, I think, I'll say it to you this way. I think that the challenge is, I think there's two vectors. One, the vector is where the bank is currently, and two, the vector is where the consumer wants the bank to be.
Right.
And I think with, for example, in e-commerce, like Shopify gives all their merchants pre-built solutions, pre-vetted solutions that can sync right to that e-commerce site. That doesn't exist in banking. So CoreIgnite is delivering that capability to the banks so that banks can now move at a pace of a fintech.
There's a big part of, I think, these kinds of platforms, like the ecosystems they work in, the partnerships they have. Talk to us a little bit like you're thinking of that and how important that is to make it work.
Well, I think ecosystems are really important, especially for banks, especially for those consumers that expect new innovations from banks. Like, for example, we made an announcement with Ripple where Ripple, as you know, they're in the sort of cryptocurrency space, and banks want to be able to offer that capability to their banking consumers. So we created a partnership with Ripple where through CoreIgnite, we can cascade that capability to our existing install base of banking customers.
Was a challenge here, it seems like traditional banking was sort of very siloed or vertical, if I'm thinking about that correctly. What the challenge is with these traditional systems and the regulation is for them to go more horizontal across platforms. Is that the way would you help them?
Yeah, I would say that these banks are highly regulated, right? So they can't drop on a dime the way a small startup could.
Right.
So I think the idea is that how do we give them the flexibility of a fintech, but still maintaining and still being true to being battle hardened and tested, because they are highly regulated.
Right.
So it really comes down to that. How do we enable that capability and give them the flexibility to do all these amazing things without rip and replacing their systems? Because that's not attainable.
I mean, does it feel like there's almost a translation layer, like these legacy banking systems that maybe they've been running since 1950 or so?
1970.
How do you drag those into the 21st century?
And the way you drag them is you don't do a rip and replace. You basically do an extend and deploy. In other words, Arvind, who was here before us, Hogan, which is our core banking platform, runs on IBM mainframes.
Right.
And part of the problem is a lot of the engineers who worked on these systems in the 80s and 90s aren't with those banks anymore.
Right.
And so the question is, well, we want to move to this new thing. Well, you really can't, because you don't know what the system does now. So the idea is, how do we sort of build on that, which is how do I extend the value in the investments you've made while not breaking anything, but giving the ability to kind of engage.
We're at an AI summit. We got to talk about AI.
Yeah, AI is
Tell me how that fits into your thinking, fits into that platform, how that changes what you're doing with banks.
So I think, listen, AI is, obviously it's here. Obviously it's critical to what we're doing. Our point of view is, I think AI fits into three buckets for us. One, how do we deliver a delightful consumer experience? So every consumer has some form of chat AI on their phone.
Right.
They're chatting with that for everything in their life, and why not their bank? On the other side of things, how do we sort of take knowledge that is in the mind of an engineer and institutionalize that for the bank so that we could deliver better engineering capabilities, developer capabilities, where they can now develop using AI at a faster clip.
Is this on the horizon? Like, I'm thinking about my own personal banking, as I would love to be able to chat to a chatbot that knows all of my finances instead of downloading the PDFs and uploading it to something else. Is like where you're looking at is trying to build that connection inside of it.
We released it yesterday, so from our point of view, we're ready to go commercial. And that means we've got a number of banks that use our Hogan core banking platform today that we own that are very interested in this topic, that are very interested in using AI to deliver. And again, I don't think it's about sort of boiling the ocean. It's picking sort of key small wins that are bite-sized and tangible, where they could try something that moves the needle. And I think that's the opportunity here for them.
Spin this forward then. Like, all these technologies are moving so fast, especially with AI. What does this look like in 12 months? What's on the horizon that you're excited about for a bank that misses this opportunity?
I think banks think about transformation as these large, big bang, what they call them big bang movements. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think particularly with AI and particularly with some of the things we talked about, it's all about, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So the idea is, how do we break down and deliver incremental wins? And so from my perspective and the way that we think about this is, let's deliver incremental wins that are meaningful, where you can actually do things at your pace, at the pace to which a bank can go in.
Right, and I guess that's about finding that sweet spot between the speed of the technology now and the speed at which highly regulated banks can go. But then over that 12 months, if they look in the future, like, what do you think is different from like the consumer standpoint?
Think about your mortgage application. Imagine being able to now have one mortgage application with that one bank that knows all of your source of funds, where instead of having piles of paperwork, it's maybe 3 or 4 pages of information you fill out, but through AI, the bank can actually collate and collect all the necessary pieces.
It knows all that information.
It knows all that
from
information.
The data, right?
The agentic aspect of it knows more about who you are within the 4 walls of that bank.
It seems like the goal is, instead of me hunting for all of that
let the bank do that for you.
The tool goes and gets
That's exactly right.
The data.
Because what that's going to do is it's going to enable the bank to do more loans. It's going to enable them to process more transactions, and there's no burden on you, the consumer.
All right, a future ahead of us. Before we run out of time, I want to end on one fun thing, like in our newsletter. Let's end on one fun AI thing.
Okay.
Give me a use case for AI in your real life.
All right. Well, the video that we saw was all completely done in AI. I'm a bedroom DJ, which means that I DJ at home and no one likes it but me. So
for an audience of one.
The audience of one. So it gave me inspiration to kind of create some of my own beats that I can kind of mix into my own sets. So to me, that's how I use it.
Is it any good?
Listen, I think it's amazing, but that's just me.
All right, I've asked this question for a lot of people. Robot DJ, that is a first one.
Yeah.
Sandeep, thanks for being here. Huge
Thank
thanks to DXC for making today possible.